Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch-Hunter. Today, we have as our special guest, Alana Benson, Certified Athletic Administrator and 2022 UIAAA Hall of Famer. Alana, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Let's have you begin by sharing with our audience where you grew up, where you went to college, all those types of things.
Okay. Well, first I want to say thank you for having me, and I appreciate it. It's a great honor to be on your podcast. I went to high school and grew up in Kanab, Utah, sandwiched in between two athletic brothers, and raised in an athletic family. I played multiple sports. Didn't really know that I was going to play sports. I kind of grew up aspiring to be a cheerleader, and sports just kind of came my way, and really had a passion for it and enjoyed it, and ended up pursuing that in college. Actually went on to pursue two sports in college.
And what two sports would those be?
I played women's volleyball basketball and track.
At SUU?
It was SUSC at the time.
Okay, and share with our audience something that I learned during your Hall of Fame induction. You had the high jump record in Utah for quite a significant amount of time, or do you still own that?
No, I don't have it anymore. But for 34 years, I co-held that with one of my teammates, Camille Broadhead. So my sophomore year and her junior year, we both jumped and broke the state record and went 5.5 3/4. So, and held that for 34 years. It was a 1A state record.
Well, that's awesome. So let's have you share, because I don't want to date myself, but I can remember when the Fosbury flop first came into existence when I was younger. So I assume by the time you got to high school that nobody jumped the old way, that everyone did it back first. Is that correct?
That's not true. So when I first started jumping, I did the scissors. So that's
really?
Yeah. So the mats that we had were not feasible to do the Fosbury flop on. So that's how I first learned.
Oh, so, well, there you go. And so was there a great opportunity to play, for example, basketball in Kanab? Did you have leagues, or did you have to travel to participate? Because it's not, I know it's obviously it's a bigger city now and people are calling it the new St. George.
Yeah.
But back when you were there, it was not that big of a town. So did they have rec leagues for kids, or how did that work?
All the way to Fredonia, and which was like 7 miles away.
Yeah.
All the way to Valley. And that was really big for us, which was, 30 miles away. Well, not that far, but that was our travel league. We got to go play them, and that was big time for us. But that was pretty much the gist of our travel leagues. And it was a big deal. It was a really big. And I think that we started girls basketball in the 7th grade. Was my first experience with girls basketball. And it was more of like a PE league kind of.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you were playing girls basketball against Valley High up in Orderville, Farrell would have been the coach, and Farrell would have had great teams back then.
Absolutely. Yes. Actually, I was going to talk about Farrell in this interview eventually.
Okay. So let's talk for a moment about how you then decided to teach high school, how you got to Parowan, and how then you became the athletic director there.
Okay. Well, it's kind of an interesting story, but so like I said, I went into college and did both sports there. And then I was looking to do some student teaching and also get some experience into coaching. And I applied for a job at Parowan for a volleyball assistant job. And I got that job, and it turned into a volleyball job as an assistant, and then it turned into a basketball job. And I ended up coaching track also that first year.
Okay.
With my here. And that's when I was Coach Orton. And it just so happened that I met my husband during that time, and we had coached basketball together, but we were not married at the time. So, and then a job opened up, and I also had taken another job in Vegas at the time, and I declined that job and ended up applying for a job here and decided to stay here. So that's how that happened.
And so how long were you at Parowan before you became the athletic director?
I ended up getting the job here, and I ended up being the head coach for volleyball, basketball, and track for 5 years. And for my 5th year, John Pensis, who was our principal, came to me and wanted me to be the athletic director. And I had just barely had our daughter, and she was like 3 weeks old, and I was like a little overwhelmed. And so I said, will have to give up something. I don't think I can coach, be the head coach of 3 sports and also be an athletic director.
And be a mom.
Yes, first time mom. So I chose to let track be the sport that I did not do, even though I was very passionate about track, because it was a lot of weekends. I think that was my main reason. And so I became the athletic director, and then I did athletic director and still coached 2 sports and taught language arts as well. And so I did that for the next 25 years.
Okay. So let's talk for a moment about some of the mentors you had in your life that made a big difference to you as a student, athletically, and possibly even after you began coaching, you became an athletic director.
Sorry, that's my puppy. Oh, wow. So, there's just been a lot of people that, as I thought about, what I would like to say, that have been mentors in my life and influential people. First beginning, back in high school, of course, you have your coaches that are always people who guide you and direct you and point you in the right direction. But as we talked about Farrell Heaton a few minutes ago, I went to the 1A All-Star basketball game, and I had the privilege of him coaching me at that. And I remember him talking about Boyd Adams being out in the hall, and he was the women's basketball coach at SUSC at the time. And he talked to me about believing in myself and that I could go and play college ball. And I just remember how I felt at that time. And I think it was the first time that I thought that I wanted to be a coach like him. And I think it was really powerful for me. And I knew at that moment that I wanted to be someone like him and work with kids someday. I stood there and knew that at that moment. And that was pretty awesome, I think, that he had that talk with me. And I don't even know if he ever remembers that or not. But I also, when I first came into the UIAAA and I went to my very first conference, he was there, and he was a former president. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the reasons why I wanted to pursue being in the UIAAA was because of him. And so I remember that. So he's been a great person that I've looked up to because of his coaching and his passion that he has for just supporting kids and making them believe in themselves. So he's high on my list. When I got to college, of course, you can't go to SUU without, talking about Dr. Lunt and what he does for coaches there and kids coming through the program. And of course, he taught all of us in his coaching factory,
Yes.
how to coach, I think, and how to present yourself and to solve problems and care about kids and build relationships with kids. And I think that was something that when I started to take classes and learn that I knew that was a direction that I wanted to go. And then also Dr. Berg, she was a woman there that I saw that had a vision of athletics. And I think she was a pioneer in what athletics was about. And I just appreciated that she was always kind to me and nice to me. And she just expected a lot from me. And those were just some of the people that were part of my college mentoring that believed in me, I guess.
Excellent. Obviously, great examples, and you're correct. There's no one that's been on the podcast that went to SUU that doesn't mention Dr. Lunt. And so he was it is the coaching factory here in Utah for those that are listening across the nation. And some great examples. I wanted to talk to you about how you see the job of athletic director today, and how is it different from when you first started?
And I have to mention one more other person too.
Go ahead.
No way that I would have gotten through college without Ben Davidson, because especially in track, and I was also a trainer for the college, and he helped me, and he was amazing mentor to me. And so I have to say Ben Davidson as well. So and then go ahead. What was your question?
So the question is, over the 25 years that you were the athletic director, how is it different now than it was when you first became the AD? And obviously go without the obvious answer, the COVID years, because that was a nightmare for everybody. But how is it different now than when you first started?
When it first started, most of the coaches were on staff, and most of them were like myself, and they had been trained to be a coach, came in wanting to coach. And then at the end of my career, most of them were paraprofessionals. And so that was different. We were hiring several different positions, and there was a lot of turnover. And then there was so much more training that was involved from the state, and more paperwork that was tied to each student and to each program. And so the facilitation of each program had changed tremendously. And that was something I don't think that people really realized. When I first started athletic director, I could just fill out a pink sheet, have the kids sign it, and get the bus trip sheets in and the officials. And the process was difficult, but it wasn't to the extreme that it was when I left the profession. And so I'm retired now. But so it changed tremendously in what was tied to the day-to-day job.
What's one thing you wish you had known when you began your career? What's one thing that you wish you had known then that you know now?
How much I loved it and how hard it would be to leave it.
Good answer.
I mean, it's an amazing, it becomes your life.
Yeah.
It's life. And it becomes who you are. I didn't realize that, but it is who you are.
Alana, what's your biggest failure in life, or disappointment, and what did you learn from it?
I actually have two of them.
That's fine.
I want to talk about two of them. So the first one was coaching. And this was something that I had to learn the hard way, I think. And there was two reasons that as I've reflected back on it, that when I was very young and coaching, I was 21 when I first started. And I was told, like, don't be friends with the kids, and you have to keep a straight line and all of this. And so I came in really hard and authoritative, and I struggled, I really kept a strong boundary, but I struggled with building a relationship with kids. And I coached out of fear. And when I was at the Iron County Fair, about 5 or 6 years later, I had an athlete who I adored. I thought she was a great athlete. And I had pushed her so hard because I saw this great potential in her. And she really ducked and ran from me. And she had a new baby. And I wanted to go see her baby. And it was like, if I touched her baby, she was going to like, oh no, don't touch Benson, touch her baby, touch my baby, And I realized at that moment, my mistake. And I changed my entire coaching at that time. And that was hard for me to realize that was not my role. That's not how I wanted to be. That's not how I wanted to coach. And I had to learn how to build a relationship first and articulate why I was being hard on the kids, or why I was pushing them, and what my goal was for them, and what it was I was seeing in them. So that was a big reality check for me. And I've had to do some work to mend some of those relationships from when I first started coaching girls, because that's not how it should be. So that was my first. And then my second one was when I was AD. And I think that being a type A personality, I did not learn how to shut it off. And I brought it home a lot. And I worked a lot through the night, and my health suffered, and sometimes my family suffered from it. And if I had to do that over again, I would find a different way to manage that and let some things go that could have waited.
So yes, tell us about the CAA.
I think that is the best program that you can do as an athletic director. It helped me more than anything. And I have to thank Brian Phelps for that. So Brian Phelps is the one that got me into the ADAC, asked me if I would serve on that board. And I was a little hesitant at first, but I am so thankful that I did serve on the ADAC. And I'm thankful that I went into the program. I learned so much. Plus, I was able to rub shoulders with some amazing people and share ideas. I just felt like I was part of the team all the time, and learned a learning team. So that was a process. I'm retired and I'm still taking classes. So I just finished another class the other day. So that tells you how much I still enjoy learning.
Well, talk a little bit more about your journey with the UIAAA. You talked about being on the ADAC at the time. Now it's changed to Athletic Director Executive Committee, but you spent some time there, and then talk about how you decided to throw your hat into the ring and become only the second female president of the UIAAA. Well,
thanks to you, Hush, for talking me into that. Or you didn't even talk me into it. You just suggested that I do that, and I appreciate that. So I served on the ADAC advisory committee for 6 years, and then the ADAC for 3. And so I was a total of 9 years prior to going into the female, or I guess running for the presidency for that term. And I just decided that after talking to you and being part of the organization, that was just something that I felt like that I could do, and wanted to be part of it. And I never felt like that it was a job that was that there was a gender tied to it. It was just a job, and I felt like I could do the job. And that's how I saw it. And so I never felt any any resistance to that. And so I just felt welcome.
Well,
So.
Thank you. One thing I wanted to mention, I believe, and my memory goes back now, but now each of our presidents has a slogan to begin the year. And I believe that started with you. I think you were the first one because we had talked about having a slogan. And I think this is before the NIAAA presidents even had a slogan nationally. And so talk about that, talk about your slogan, and talk about how you came up with that idea, because it was a great thing that still goes on.
Oh, I love that. Well, I'm a positive person, and I like to have a vision. And as I started out, I wanted to kind of just bring my own touch to the group of men that were there. And it was really me and Becky Anderson who were in the room.
Yeah.
You can't forget Becky, because she brought a lot of energy also. And I just wanted to have something that was positive. So I made these wood signs that said "Beyond the Horizon," and painted them myself with the UIAAA colors, if you remember that.
Right.
And put them, said everyone could just put them in their window or wherever they wanted to, and just made a fun slogan, and made the front pages all the same to start off the year, just kind of with, a little touch of me to start it off.
I just remember because mine sat in my window all year long, and kids would ask me what that is. And then it gave me a chance to explain it and talk about it. And then, of course, ever since then, we've had a slogan for each of the presidents in the UIAAA. And as I said just a moment ago, they've even picked that up nationally now. So the UIAAA owes you a big thank you.
Oh, good. Well, it's just, I just like that little touch to, start the year off right with something. So our district does that as well. Our district's always picked a slogan, just something that we can think about for the year.
Well done. Let's have you talk about one common myth about being an athletic director that you would like to debunk for all of our listeners out there.
Well, I love this myth, though. Like, this is something I actually love. I think it's a myth that, like, athletic directors just go to the game and sit there, watch the game, and just, like, eat a hot dog and, like, don't do anything. Maybe they let the officials at a halftime or something. And, and that's actually what I want you to think. Because if I can go to a game and that's all I have to do, I mean, I did my job really well.
Yes, but you and I both know that that's certainly not, I mean, that may be what the public sees, but certainly.
Yeah, but that's what I want them to see. I want it to just look easy. I wanted to go to the game, enjoy it, and have everything run smoothly, because I get to watch the game at that point. I'm not stressing that, the officials didn't show up, or the other team was late, or this didn't happen, or no one brought the cash box,
right.
Didn't come, or all the things that you have so much to prepare to get to there. So I like it when it just looks like you just get to go there.
Well, that's a great outlook to have on it. Thank you for sharing that. Let's go back now to the UIAAA conference. So I of course don't remember when your first one was, but one of my favorite memories of the UIAAA conference, and you and I joke about this, is that this would have been your son, and he would have been, I don't know, 1 or 2 years old. And I know I was in the hot tub on a Friday night, just taking it easy for the big Saturday, the wind up to the conference. And he decided that he wanted to take a little swim. So I'll let you share that story with our listeners.
Oh, that was a great story. So yeah, Shado, he was fun at the age. He's fun at every age. He's been fun. Yeah, I was down talking to you in the hot tub, and Shen and Shay and my husband came by, and he'd been swimming earlier. But this time he was all dressed, and we were ready to go home, I think, or close to ready. They were ready to go home. He just opened up that little gate right there and took off running. Of course, he can't swim, and just dove in the deep end of the pool. And remember, I was dressed in my suit.
I do remember.
Suit already, and just had presented, just barely had presented, because that's the year I was the president. And my husband was behind the wall and he wasn't paying attention and had no clue. I was yelling at some guy, stop him. And he didn't know what I was saying. In went Shade in the pool. So I had to go in after him.
And so now here it is, what, 17 or 18 years later. And I want you to share this because I read it in the newspaper last week. He's the 2A MVP in baseball. Did I say that right?
Oh, yeah, close. He got Player of the Year for 2A, yes, in baseball. Yeah.
And that's a big deal. And so I saw that picture and I turned to Deb and I said, "Did you remember when this kid went in the hot tub?" She started laughing. So that's very good. So let's go back to
good thing we read.
Yeah. Let's go back to when you were an active AD and share with our audience what's the favorite part of your job. Not the favorite part of being a coach, but the favorite part of your job being the AD.
You know, it's just the little things. It really is. It's just the little things that keep you going. I'm a little odd and I do like the paperwork. But my favorite part is just the little, it's like when we send the kids off for the games and go send them off to state and they get to run down the hall, or they come home and we get to celebrate them in an assembly, or I go to a game and watch a kid that's been struggling to score some points and I get to talk to them about it the next day. I think that's just the fun part for me. It's just the interaction. Being with the kids, celebrating.
Great answer. So let's finish up with a couple of questions. The first one being, I want you to give 2 suggestions to a brand new athletic administrator, and they need to follow these 2 suggestions in order to be successful. From your point of view, what would those 2 suggestions be?
Absolutely. Like, find a system that works for you. And it doesn't have to look like mine or yours or the other ADs, but it has to be a system that works for you. And it probably shouldn't look like mine or the next guy's, but it has to be something that is going to keep you organized, because you do not want to be that AD that misses someone's academic all-state, or you do not want to not have a bus show up, or miss an official. You don't. And you want to know the rules, and you want to have that ready to go at the first of the season. You don't want to be late on anything, or you don't want to be scrambling. And so you need to find something that works for you, and however it does is great. That would be my suggestion: is find a system that works for you and then follow it.
Alana, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last part. What was that again?
Go and see how multiple people do it, so that you can get a look at different people do it. So you can find something that works for you.
Alana, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
I'm loving retirement.
All right. Well, talk for a minute about being retired and how it's the good life after putting so many years in as a coach as an AD.
Well, I went back in sub for a while the first of this year. I don't know if I'm really enjoying it, but no, I am enjoying it. It is great. It is well worth. It is worth it. But I love going back and supporting the teams, and I've still cooked quite a few dinners, and I don't plan on doing anything but that. So.
That's excellent. That wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Once again, our guest has been Alana Benson, Certified Athletic Administrator and 2022 inductee into the UIAAA Hall of Fame. Alana, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much.
For our listeners, we hope you tune in again next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection.